Your own government is trying to warn you. This on this episode of The Real World Prepper. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on this edition of The Real World Prepper. I am him. Broadcasting from the beautiful Area 53. Thanks for joining me. So, like the title said, your own government is trying to warn you. Let me tell you what that's about. Let me go over a couple of little articles that I've got here. This will lay a base for what I'm going to tell you about. This indeed has to do with prepping, everything to do with prepping. It has to do with prepping specifically on what the government, the U.S. government recommends that we should do as preppers. So this is interesting to me. So the Cybersecurity 202, U.S. businesses are preparing for an Iranian hacks after American cyber attack. So U.S. businesses should get ready for a barrage of digital retaliation from Iran after the Trump administration launched a cyber attack against the Islamic Republic's rocket and missile launching systems. Current and former U.S. government officials said this weekend. So, the U.S., there's no secret that the U.S. is engaged in cyber attacks and hacking and things. I mean, all of the big governments around the world are doing just that. That is part of the new normal of warfare, hands-off warfare, whatever you might call it. These guys, these Iranian hackers, were already targeting U.S. companies with specialized malicious software designed to wipe the contents of computer networks rather than to simply steal data, wiping content out. So this is wiping away code that does all types of things. And I think in this instance they're talking about different banks and institutions and things like that. So I'm not going to go on too much in this particular article because it leads me to another article which leads me to where I'm going with this. From this article, Chinese hackers demonstrate their global cyber espionage reach with the breach at 10 of the world's biggest telecoms. Okay, so communications are at stake in this instance here from Chinese hackers. A multi-year attack carried out by Chinese hackers was exposed recently, and the scope of it beyond anything previously seen in a nation-state's cyber espionage. The hacking group known as APT-10, a notorious team that's widely believed to have a Chinese government support, is believed to have compromised at least 10 major global carriers and used their networks to track and spy on high-profile business leaders and members of foreign governments. So what makes this cyber espionage incident unique is that Chinese hackers appear to have been following their targets as they move from country to country, hop from one breach network to another as needed. Okay, so this ability is not new, but the mass scale that it's being used on has not been seen before. So what are they after? This seems to be going on for several years. It's believed let's see. I'm sorry. Wrong thing. Cyber espionage operation was discovered. So what are the Chinese hackers after? Just trying to answer that. Okay, yeah, the Chinese hackers were looking to track movements of 20 specific individuals and moved on to other compromised telecom networks in following them. They were not named, this APT-10 were not named specifically, but all of the available information points to this group as the most likely culprit. The security firm that Cyber Reason, which is tracking this, they described the group's approach as a total takeover, giving them low profile but complete access to the target networks so that they could commit cyber espionage over an extended period of time. And it goes on, more and more details about how it happens, what they're doing, etc., etc. Leads me to what the government's been warning you about. Your very own government is trying to warn you. Now, I find this very interesting because for a very long time, back in the days, those of you who remember the days of civil defense, getting under the table, doing bomb drills, Cold War, and that kind of thing. Since those days, there has been a large, for many years anyway, since those days, there has been a large influx of, or rather a large increase in the feeling of security, in the feeling of everything's okay. You know, your benevolent government's got you taken care of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have nothing to worry about. We're the greatest nation on earth. We're the strongest nation on earth. I believe that we're the greatest nation on earth. I believe that we're the strongest nation on earth. I believe that we are run amok with traitors in power. Not to mention that we have made vast numbers of enemies, okay? So, this latest article, now this article is a few months old, but it is very current. It is more important today, I think, than even a few months ago when it was written. Start prepping. Electric grid is the prime target of terrorists, a profound threat, says a council that is studying this. Okay, so in a new report that warns that the electric grid is a prime target of terrorists, Americans are being urged to prepare for up to 6 months without electricity, transportation, fuel, money, and health care. Let me reread that. Americans are being urged by the U.S. government and DHS to prepare for up to 6 months without electricity, transportation, fuel, money, and health care. Now this says up to 6 months. Let me go on and share something else here with you. This is a quote from this published report. People no longer keep enough essentials within their homes, reducing their ability to sustain themselves during an extended, prolonged power outage. We need to improve individual preparedness. This is a report that was given to President Trump. Now that is an understatement. First of all, it's true. People no longer keep enough essentials within their homes. This has gone on for a long time. You've heard me talk about it. You know, folks I work with that go to the store every day to buy groceries for that day to cook dinner, which makes no sense to me, even if you're not a prepper. You know, I've always said, why not make a grocery trip a week or two, you know, and I don't get the going every day. Anyway, the report goes on to say there needs to be more individual accountability for preparedness. Surviving a catastrophic power outage. This is from the President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council, and it was published by DHS, Department of Homeland Security. The chief political correspondent, Byron York, expanded on the expanded Washington Examiner magazine. It looked at the potential of a power outage of up to 6 months. And recommended Americans have enough supplies on hand for a minimum of 14 days, which they say is a standard for some prepper organizations. I don't know of a true prepper whose standard is 14 days. That right there is like a bug out bag, if you ask me. Build a culture, another quote in this council's publishing. Build a culture of preparedness. Building a culture of preparedness includes objectives to incentivize investments that reduce risk, including pre-disaster mitigation, closing the insurance gap, helping people prepare for disasters, and better learn from past disasters. Improve continuously and innovate. That was a key recommendation. Now that is good for government, municipalities, for business organizations, for big groups, infrastructure, caretakers, etc. In some ways, that is some of this stuff can apply to the individual. I mean, we're not gonna, as individual preppers, we're not going to worry about insurance gaps and things of that nature. But yeah, pre-disaster mitigation, helping people prepare for disasters, including yourselves. Learning from past disasters, improve continuously, and innovate. That's a given with us preppers in the everyday world. The report, a draft to be voted on soon by the council, and is the second in 1 month to warn of a profound threat to the electric grid from terrorism and naturally occurring events like a solar storm or flare. So this is to warn of a profound threat, okay? They see it, the government, your U.S. government sees this as a likely profound threat that we need to prepare for as many as 6 months. Let me go on here because I found something very interesting here in all this. A prior governmental report also called for presidential action to protect the grid. We've talked about that in an earlier video. Today, they draw emergency attention that the threat and impact of a national blackout would have. This profound risk, this is a quote from the council, this profound risk requires a new national focus. Significant public and private action is needed to prepare for and recover from a catastrophic outage that could leave large parts of the nation without power for weeks or months and cause severe failures in other sectors, including water, wastewater, communications, transportation, healthcare, financial services that are critical to our public health and safety and our national and economic security. Okay? The report is an urgent call to action to organize a uniform reaction to the grid attack, harden it from attack, warn of the threats, and push regular Americans into preparing for the worst. This is what we've been saying the whole time, guys. Whether it be a grid down, power outage, or whatever the case may be, I think that personally financial and grid down is going to be part of it. However it comes about, be it war, be it famine, be it pestilence, be it martial law, be it invasion from another country, be it a civil war broke out from within, I believe it's going to lead to, at least in parts of the country, power outages long term, possibly forever, and definitely a financial collapse. It also calls for the federal spending instead of a reliance on rate hikes by individual utilities to fix their system. So, okay, there you go. The grid is a prime target for attack by nation states, and it is not fair for taxpayers to bear the burden of this national security function. If I thought the money was going there legitimately to help mitigate and plan for this type of thing, I would not have a problem with my tax dollars going towards that, okay? But we know how mismanaged taxpayer dollars are in the hands of our politicians. So it says that the potential of a catastrophic half-year blackout could impact 75 million. The attack could also come with no notice, here we go, and last half a year, long duration lasting several weeks to months, at least 2 months, but more likely 6 months or more. 6 months or more. See, these guys up in Washington that are writing these reports, these councils that are putting this together, they've been studying this stuff harder than you or I ever could, okay? They have more information about it than you or I could ever get our hands on. And for them to, thankfully, they're recommending 6 months, okay? But that's not enough, because they know, and you know, and I know that if something like that goes down, there will be regions, if not the entire gamut of this country, that will be down for well over 6 months, if not forever. But they do, that's what I find interesting here. At least 2 months, but more likely 6 months or more, due to physical destruction to the equipment, such as transformers, transmission lines, or the severity of the event resulting in limited workforce to repair the damage, or the inability to create and or transport replacement parts. Again, something we've talked about before in another video, EMP attack, that I did several months back. There are these transformers that we use, and I forget the numbers, man, but it was, I want to say there's 2,000 of them or so in the United States, big ones, that have to have special trains. There's only a few train cars in the whole country that can actually transport these things. There's only a few routes they can go because of how big they are, and there's only, I think, 2 in reserve. Two in reserve on United States soil, and we would never get one. If there was a power grid down situation, we would never get another one from another country where they're manufactured. Never. And trying to put people together to repair these things or get the system back up together, to move places and things and equipment around, it's going to be next to impossible, okay? And they know this. We're on an antiquated system. At its newest, it's 40-something years old, our power grid system. And at its oldest, 100 or more, So, so let's see here. Yeah, so significant public and private action is needed. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. The severity of the event resulting in limited workforce to repair damage, inability to create replacement parts. This profound threat requires A new national focus. Significant action is needed to prepare for catastrophic power outage that could last for weeks or months. According to DHS, the Council provides the President of the United States through the Secretary of Homeland Security with advice on the security and resilience of critical infrastructure sectors by their functional systems, physical assets, and cyber networks. Anyway, it goes on and goes on and goes on. Your own government. Your own government is trying to warn you, okay? You know, if you watch these channels like mine, you know, and you hear about prepping and why we should be prepping, and you guys know this, most of you, I'm sure. You know, this is what we're talking about. But your own government wants you to know, to be prepared, that you have good reason. There is credible threat. You have good reason to be prepared for as many as 6 months. And that one little or more they added in that council statement. I believe the or more is everything. Because I believe if it goes down, if it goes down, if it's knocked down, I don't mean a storm takes it out for an hour or whatever. I mean if the grid goes down, everything stops. Your water stops. Your sanitation quits. There's no more food at the grocery stores. You know, there's no communication. There's no automobiles, or at least no gasoline stations, you know, that are going to have anything after just a few days. Even if they had a little something in there, you know, to pump them out of there with electricity, it's going to be over and done. So listen, get yourself together. Get yourself some preps. Prepare, prepare, prepare. This is why we say this, okay? My opinion, you and your family should have a minimum of 1 year of water, food, sanitation, medical. You should have weapons. You should be defendable. You should know how to use all of these things. You should have resources in place to replenish what you do not have or what you are apt to lose. This is going to be, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly, okay? And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be, woohoo, Mad Max, we get to all just do whatever we want. It's not how it's going to be. Build a community. Get to know some folks. Know that you can trust these folks. Be prepared to make hard decisions when you have to, okay? That's all I got. It's just, it's the government has warned you. We're warning you on these channels. The government is telling you to be prepared, okay? So, by gosh, they know everything, right? Don't they? Okay, so we ought to listen, huh? All right, guys, that's all I got. This edition of The Real World Prepper coming to you live from Area 53. If you've made it this long, I want to encourage you to go check out my email address in the About section, my P.O. box in the About section, go to my Patreon link, join me on Patreon. Any donations, any patron subscribers, anything like that you can do helps me, helps this channel, helps me keep spreading the message, and I appreciate it very much. All of you that have already done so, thank you very much, and those of you that are bound and determined to go do the same, I thank you in advance. Thank you for watching this video on The Real World Prepper, and I will see you next time.